Welcome back to EDH on a Budget. I'm your host Iceman, and today we're going to be going over 6 of the best budget cards from Foundations. By budget, I mean $2 and under. TCG Player, not a sponsor. First up, we have Electro Duplicate. It's a sorcery for 2 and a red. This card is worth 15 cents. It says create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except it has haste, and at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice this token. And it has flashback for 2 red. So I would say typically, as far as red goes for copying stuff, you might be able to find a card that can do it for 2 mana, but it's definitely not going to have flashback, and it's definitely not going to be 15 cents. So as far as that goes, that's two of the reasons why this is one of the all-stars for Foundations, in my opinion. Plus, red is the color of big mana rituals, where you have a bunch of red pips and it's only for 1 turn, and this is a way you can sync it into creating two creatures potentially in 1 turn with haste. The with haste is important, in my opinion. It kind of makes up for it's sacrificing itself at the end of turn, because I'd say a lot of creatures that are being played nowadays either have a really big enter the battlefield ability, attack, or combat damage trigger, and even if they have a dying trigger, the sacrificing would cause it to die. So basically, no matter what the reason, you are creating a token copy of target creature you control, you're gonna be getting the max benefit out of it for those turns. And the haste is always a great surprise. They don't have a full turn to be like, oh, you know what, we need to board wipe this creature, or we need to say, use a sorcery or removement, like only instants they're going to be able to interact with this. So it's a nice way to catch it by surprise. You also won't be viewed as a threat, because it's not going to be something that sticks around, and they're not going to see it coming. So it's very versatile in that aspect. Next up, we have High Society Hunter. This is a vampire noble for 3 black. This is 45 cents. Its stats are 5/3, which is pretty good for a flyer. Most flyers aren't so high in power. And it says, whenever this creature attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So I mean, the +1/+1 counter is nice, but the second part of this card says, whenever another non-token creature dies, draw a card. So this has a way to make a creature of yours die. Now, the thing is, you do have to pick non-token if you want to draw the card. If you just want the counter, you could pick a token creature, and that would give you the counter. But I mean, for max benefit, you're obviously going to want to get rid of a creature card you have. And the great thing is, this does not just affect whenever one of your non-token creatures dies. It's any non-token creature. So if this card just so happens to be on the battlefield, and you or anybody casts a board wipe that destroys all the creatures, you are going to draw so many cards. It's just insane. And in black, black does have some ways to exile creatures, but for the most part, black's removal and board wipes are all going to destroy the creatures. And another nice thing is, you don't lose life at all for either part, sacrificing the creature or drawing the card. A lot of black's card draw says whenever a creature or a non-token creature dies, draw a card, lose a life. So you just don't have to worry about that. I mean, again, because of that board wipe scenario, that could, if it were to say lose a life, that could be a concern. If 10 or 15 creatures all of a sudden die at once, that would have been a lot of life loss. So this is very nice that it doesn't have that typical black text on it. Next up, it's gonna be one of my favorites, High Fae Trickster, $1.74. This creature is a fairy wizard for 3 and a blue, and it has 4/2 stats. Again, I do like these high power flyers. They're gonna get in and chip away much faster at people's life. If you're playing battles or planeswalkers, or well, I guess it'd be the opponents playing planeswalkers, you know, the 4 and 5 power is gonna deal a lot of damage. Not enough people play flyers or creatures with reach. Anyways, this creature has flash, flying, and you may cast spells as though they had flash. So this is great for many reasons. There are other cards in Magic that grant all of your spells flash, but most of them have to be played at sorcery speed, which kind of defeats the purpose. Being able to play this at flash speed means that you can play at the most optimal time. You can keep up whatever instant speed interaction you have, and if nothing happens where you need to interact with stuff, you can cast this. You can cast it at the end step before your turn, so it basically has pseudo haste and you can attack with it on your combat step. Fairy and Wizard, I'd say those are pretty relevant card types, so it could definitely go into a lot of decks. The whole flash concept makes it kind of hard to be attacked, since they don't know if you're going to flash in a blocker that is going to be unfavorable for them. I mean, I love this in Death Touch decks. If you have a blue-green, blue-black Death Touch deck, that would just be hilarious. You flashing in a 1/1 Death Toucher or something like that and taking out their commander, something they're attacking with. Next up we have Raise the Past. This card is $1.49. It's a sorcery for 2 white, and it is doing everything that almost any white deck is doing. Return all creature cards with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this strategy is called the White Weenie strategy. There are so many cards in white that say whenever a creature mana value 2 or less enters, draw a card. Whenever a creature power 2 or less, which isn't necessarily mana value 2 or less, but more often than not, they coincide, especially in the decks that play this. The fact that it comes to the battlefield is going to be what, instead of to your hand, is a fantastic part of this card. A lot of those 2 mana or less cards will have like little tiny enter the battlefield abilities like draw a card, or even some of them might have like sacrifice this creature, destroy something. There's basically a lot of value in those little mana value slots, and it's just gonna be, I mean, this can just be a flat out win con in some decks that have this strategy. Great way to come back from a board wipe, or if you're playing a mill deck, a card like this is gonna be hard for them. Next up, Abyssal Harvester. This is a creature that costs $1.51 for 1 black. This creature is a demon warlock, so not really relevant types yet. I'm sure at some point Wizards will really hem in on the warlock and demon. There are a few but commanders for that, but not a whole lot. And the stats are 3/2. This is an amazing creature that has tap, exile target creature card from a graveyard that was put there this turn. That is pretty much the only condition. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a nightmare in addition to its other types. Then exile all other nightmare tokens you control. So it is nice that it said tokens you control instead of nightmares, in case you had some changelings that you didn't want to die accidentally. Alright, so most of the time in black you're gonna reanimate stuff, and most of the time it's not gonna be on a tap ability where you can just bring it back. This card does not care how it got to the graveyard this turn. It doesn't care if you played a thrill possibility where you discarded it. It doesn't care if you milled it. It doesn't care if you cast a spell and it was countered and it never hit the battlefield. A lot of blacks there's a lot of black cards that say whenever this creature dies, bring it back. That doesn't matter. This is just the creature had to enter the battlefield or enter the graveyard from anywhere. It doesn't even have to be your graveyard, which is fantastic. So this can go into, I would say, pretty much any black deck. Are you milling opponents? Great, put this in there. You can get back their creatures, and it exiles their creature too. So this is graveyard hate and removal that's targeted, so it's not a full remove the graveyard. You're going to remove one card at a time, and you're going to get their best creatures or the cards you don't want them to have, as long as it's a creature card. This card, yeah, you can only have one nightmare at a time, one nightmare token at a time. That's true. That is a little disappointing. If you had a way to change the nightmare type of that token to something else, then in theory you could get more and more card tokens this way. But I would say that's gonna be a rare case. Like, not every deck's gonna have that. But like I said earlier, most of the time just getting that enter the battlefield ability is gonna be good enough. You doing this on an opponent's turn will give that token pseudo haste, so you can attack with it on your turn. It's gonna do a lot of work, and I'm shocked at the price right now. I feel like this price just has to go up. It's a rare, it's a deck card that wants to go in every single black deck, in my opinion. And next up is probably the cutest card. It's Preposterous Proportions. It has absolutely nothing to do with squirrels, but the art on this card is hilarious. It is these gigantic squirrels just destroying a town. So all you squirrel decks out there, it technically doesn't do anything special for your squirrels specifically, but flavor text wise, it is on point. This sorcery is 47 cents, and it's 5 white, it's 5 green, and it says creatures you control get +10/+10 and gain vigilance until end of turn. So yes, vigilance makes you think, oh, so you're not going to win this turn. Well, not necessarily. +10/+10, even though it doesn't grant trample, any creature that gets through is going to deal a massive amount of damage, and you're not going to need that many creatures to get through to win the game when they're this huge. I like the vigilance simply because of fogs and cards that can bounce your creatures at instant speed. You know, there's ways for them to survive, and then you be very vulnerable in the crackback. Well, giving vigilance leaves your creatures as blockers, so you would be able to be safe in many aspects. I'm gonna read, I never do this, but I'm gonna read the flavor text. Their acorn hunt was unsuccessful, but they did find the wizard's experimental potion cache. So, like I said, any go white creature deck is gonna want this. Most creature token decks naturally go wide. Whether you're, flying with birds or you're going wide with elementals or squirrels, it just doesn't matter. If you get 10, 15 creatures, this is gonna be a huge swing in your favor and gonna win the game. Also, green is the color that has the most ways to grant trample for all your creatures. Everybody knows anger can give haste to creatures when it's in your graveyard, but not everybody plays the green version, which is, I think it's Brawn, and that grants trample to all your creatures. There's Garruk's Uprising. Everybody plays that for the card draw, but it also gives trample to all your creatures. There are many, many cards in green that just grant passively trample to all your creatures. So I'm not too concerned that it doesn't give flying or trample or some evasive way to get damage in. It is 7 mana, so it's not as expensive as like a Craterhoof Behemoth, but more expensive than a typical overrun. But +10/+10 is a lot higher than most overruns, and I'd even say Craterhoof Behemoth, which is like the staple expensive overrun type of card. I'd say even that card, you know, like you're playing it and you needed, in this case, you would need 9 other creatures to get the same pump. So it's possible, but for sure giving 10/10/10 is pretty awesome. And if you have anybody who's got like commander damage, you know, giving this on your commander can definitely be a knockout in that aspect, where they may not have seen it coming, which is the nice part about sorceries. Please like, share, and subscribe to help the channel grow, and I enjoy getting your feedback on this, on what I can do better or what you like, so please hit that comment. And that is it. Thanks for watching.